At the start of the chapter, we see Enning and his friends eating lunch together after solving Tao's problem. Here, Anning's attention is less on the food and more on Wei Hang, and he's busy praising his beautiful face. Then Tao notices that some girls are secretly taking pictures of Wei Hang. He tells Wei Hang about it. Wei Hang says, "I'm used to it now, so it doesn't bother me." This surprises Tao a lot, and he thinks, "Do you really not feel uncomfortable?" Sheng Han immediately says, "Fatty, you won't understand. Wei Hang has always been handsome. Girls have always been after him. Just look at his face once. How could anyone not fall in love with him?" After hearing the praise, Wei Hang says thank you. In the middle of all this, Tao suddenly asks Anning, "Tell us, what do you think of Wei Hang?" Poor Anning gets so panicked that all the juice spills out of his mouth, and he looks at Wei Hang in shock. Here, we see Wei Hang smiling, waiting for Anning's answer. Anning is extremely nervous and thinks, "They're right. Wei Hang is really extremely handsome." Then Sheng Han stops them from teasing Anning and says, "Anning is already so panicked. We shouldn't ask him anything more." Suddenly, someone's foot touches Anning from below. Anning gets really startled. Sheng Han asks him, "What happened to you?" Wei Hang says, "I accidentally stepped on his foot," and starts apologizing. Then Tao says, "I noticed your legs are really long too. You're completely an athlete." Wei Hang says, "No, I'm just average." Here Tao asks, "Have you ever climbed snowy mountains?" Wei Hang tells him about Mount Makalu, which is a snowy mountain. Anning also says, "Yes, Mount Makalu is much more dangerous than Mount Everest." Wei Hang says, "Yes, exactly. It's the only mountain where I really struggled to climb. And I even lost the competition." In the middle of this conversation, Anning finds out Wei Hang's Instagram handle Nami and thinks, so that's why Wei Hang named his account The Cliff, because it's related to rock climbing. He smiles and thinks, "I never thought Wei Hang could be so childish." Then Tao tells Wei Hang, "I want to do rock climbing too. Teach me." Wei Hang says, "You won't be able to do it." Tao says, "You haven't even taught me yet, so how can you say that?" Wei Hang says, "Let's arm wrestle. If you beat me even once, I'll teach you." So now, there's going to be an arm wrestling competition between them. Anning already knows who is going to win. We see Tao grabbing Wei Hang's hand and getting shocked, saying, "Da Ji, why are you so hard?" Hearing this, Wei Hang's throat tightens, and Anning's mouth goes dry. Tao clarifies immediately, "I was talking about your hand." Tao clarifies again, "I was talking about the hand. You people have dirty minds." Wei Hang breathes a sigh of relief and says, "All rock climbers have hands like this." Then the competition starts between them, and as everyone expected, Wei Hang wins very easily. Here Sheng Han locks Tao's arm and says, "You only know how to talk big." Then Wei Hang tells them, "You don't need to worry. If you want to learn, I can still teach you. Just make time and come to me." Sheng Han and Tao agree. Then Wei Hang asks Anning, "Do you want to come too?" Anning gets really surprised and doesn't know what to answer. He says, "But I have class at that time." Wei Hang says, "Come whenever you have time." Then Tao tells Anning, "Class? Topper? You always top anyway, so why worry about studies?" Sheng Han also convinces him, "Come on, let's go together, it'll be a lot of fun." And he immediately puts Anning and Wei Hang's hands together and says, "Wei Hang, you have to pass the exam too." Wei Hang immediately pulls his hand back and says, "Okay, I'll try my best for this too." Anning has also fully agreed to go with them. Then Wei Hang tells Anning, "Will you help me with my studies and give me your notes?" Sheng Han and Tao immediately take advantage and say, We want your notes too. Enning is ready to give to everyone. But Wei Hang immediately says, I'll only take Anning's notes, and the poor guys back off in fear. Now, in the next scene, we see Tao and Sheng Han in Anning's room. Enning is studying, but Tao and Sheng Han are looking at the camera. Sheng Han says, a whole month has passed, but we still haven't caught that pervert. But luckily this time, Tao found him. They see in the camera that this is the boy Wo was peeking into the girl's washroom. They immediately report him to the police. Sheng Han says, that boy installed a camera in the girl's washroom. Now, he'll get a really good punishment. Enning immediately tells this to Wei Hang too. Here, Enning, while eating, sends a voice recording to Wei Hang. And Wei Hang is really happy. Now in the next scene, we see Enning, Tao, and Sheng Han coming out of the police station. They have given their testimony against that boy. Sheng Han immediately goes to buy juice. We see Tao thanking Enning from the bottom of his heart and saying, when no one believed in me, you were the only one who trusted me. Thank you so much. Enning tells him, I'm a law student, so I only believe in the truth. Hearing this, Tao gets very emotional and immediately hugs him. In the meantime, Sheng Han arrives and sees them hugging. The poor guy thinks in China, this hasn't even started yet. What are these people doing in public? Then he tells them, friends, I know you're really excited, but doing this outside the police station doesn't look good at all. Don't you think people will misunderstand seeing you hug like this? But then Tao immediately goes and hugs Sheng Han too and says, thank you so much too. And then he immediately says to give them a party, which Sheng Han also agrees to. Then Tao tells Enning to invite Wei Hang to the group chat, because only Enning can do that. But poor Enning is panicked. What if Wei Hang doesn't listen to me? Now, the next scene starts in class. We see Enning still thinking how to invite Wei Hang to the group chat. He looks at Wei Hang and starts staring. But as soon as Wei Hang looks towards him, he turns away in panic. Here, Wei Hang doesn't understand what kind of behavior this is from Enning. Enning is thinking, we're not even that close that I can invite him to the group chat. But he also remembers Tao's words that they are all friends and should be in one group. Enning is really confused about what to do, is sitting very worried. But Wei Hang is noticing all this and smiling. Then we see Wei Hang immediately getting up to leave. Before going, he looks at Enning once. Just him coming close makes Enning completely panic. Wei Hang leaves from there, and Enning doesn't understand anything. He thinks, how should I talk to Wei Hang? Then Enning messages Wei Hang. Everyone wants you to join the group chat, but if you don't want to come, no problem. I'll explain to them. After sending the message, Enning breathes a sigh of relief. But he's waiting for Wei Hang's reply every 5 minutes. He doesn't get a reply from Wei Hang the whole day. After going home, after eating, he's only waiting for Wei Hang's reply. Even before sleeping at night, he's waiting for Wei Hang's reply. But when he wakes up the next morning, he realizes that Wei Hang hasn't replied yet. But after a while, he sees that Wei Hang has joined the group chat. This makes him really surprised and extremely happy. Then we see a scene a few hours later. In the group chat, they have talked a lot, and everyone together decided that they will go rock climbing. Wei Hang has sent them the location, and everything and invited them. They are also inviting Enning. Enning says, today is Sunday, so I can make some time. And this scene cuts here. In the next scene, we see Wei Hang sitting at his job place, looking at his phone and smiling. Then his coach comes there and says, so now, you have friends. Since when did you join a group chat? This makes Wei Hang panic a lot. He immediately moves away from his coach and says, what are you doing? The coach teases him, don't pretend in front of me. I know you're definitely hiding something. Here, Wei Hang doesn't give any answer. Then we see a girl climbing there. She shouts, "You crazy people, get your asses here and help me. Can't you see how important work I'm doing?" The coach shouts back at the girl, "Stop shouting. Wei Heng isn't paying attention to you at all. He's giving all his attention to his phone." The girl shouts, "Wei Heng, what are you doing there? You idiot. Why do you think I pay you money?" But here, Wei Heng ignores her words like, "If you people want to subscribe to my channel, then quickly go and subscribe." Anyway, moving forward in the story, Wei Heng goes to her and says, "Why are you shouting? I can't always watch you. You have to learn to climb higher on your own." The girl says, "You're my coach, and I pay you money for this, and in Cherry's mind, it's running. If you weren't handsome, I wouldn't waste money on you." Then the girl shouts, "How do I climb higher? I can't reach there." Wei Heng says, "Why use so much brain for this? Just jump and reach there." The girl says, "Are you blind in real life too, along with being blind in intelligence? Can't you see I'm a girl? I can't jump that high." Wei Heng tells her, "I'm telling you the way. Use it." The girl says, "And if I fail and fall, if something happens to my face, who will take responsibility?" Wei Heng says, "You're not climbing Mount Everest. If you fall from where you are, it won't even hurt like a needle prick." The girl gets filled with anger and says, "What kind of guy are you? You don't even know how to talk to girls. Don't you know you have to behave kindly with girls?" Here the coach says, "Where is the girl? I don't see any girl." "My dear niece, since when did you become a girl? In girls' antics, all you know is getting angry." The girl says, "Shut your nonsense, uncle, or I'll come down and beat you." And then the girl tells Wei Heng, "If I fall, you'll have to treat me." Wei Heng goes to her and says, "Okay, if you fall, I'll feed you." Here we see the coach, whose eyes go to Wei Heng, and he realizes that Wei Heng deliberately went there so that if the girl falls, he can immediately hug and save her. Here he starts thinking, the way he's protecting my niece, is something going on between these two? Here the girl immediately tells Wei Heng, "You're saying this on purpose, right? Because you know I'll definitely fall." Wei Heng says, "Okay, come on. If you fall, I'll do whatever you say." The girl happily agrees and says, "If you back out of your words, I'll chase you and beat you." And here her uncle is thinking, "This foolish girl doesn't know anything. Have to teach her everything." Here we see the girl immediately jumping on Wei Heng's words. She thinks she's going to fall now, but she immediately reaches there and grabs the rock. This makes her really happy. Then the girl goes to Wei Heng and says, "Whatever you're earning for freebie being my instructor, I know everything. Till now, you haven't taught me anything. I'm doing all the work myself." Wei Heng ignores her words and thinks, "My teacher taught me exactly like this too." Wei Heng tells her, "My teacher taught me exactly like this too." The girl immediately says, "So your teacher must have been a scammer, just like you." But hearing his teacher's insult, Wei Heng starts glaring at her in anger. The girl says, "Hey, I was just joking," and Wei Heng calms down. Here, the girl is thinking, "I'm not so scared." Then she immediately goes to Wei Heng and says, "I want to take a picture with you." Wei Heng says, "Do whatever you want, quickly." And the girl immediately takes a picture with Wei Heng. Wei Heng doesn't say anything about it. Here the girl says, "The world won't end if you smile for my picture. But look at you, you're giving expressions in the picturious. If a beautiful girl like me tortured you to take this picture." Wei Heng says, "Which person takes a picture with their money-making machine?" He says this because he is her coach and she pays him money. The girl understands and gets surprise. Here the coach comes and says, "The sun can rise from the west." But Wei Heng can't smile. I've never seen him smile till today. And then the girl says, you ice block. Because of this dirty expression, I can't even post this picture. Then Wei Hang says, shut your nonsense. Here, Wei Hang ignores her words like, if you want to like my video, then quickly go and like it. Moving forward in the story, Wei Hang says, do whatever you want. Anyway, no one knows you, so no one is going to see that picture. This makes the girl really angry. She flares up and says, Wei Hang, you bastard. I curse you. You'll never get a girlfriend, and you'll die alone. Here the poor uncle is stopping her and says, all handsome boys are like this. Exactly. Uncle said it right. Exactly right. Here, Wei Hang gets surprised hearing her words and thinks, I'll never get any partner. This is good for me. I like staying alone anyway. Then in the next scene, we see Wei Hang talking to his coach. He tells him about his friends who are coming to Morado do tracking with him. The coach gets surprised and says, those people are still beginners. Their coming isn't good at all. Wei Hang says, who said their coming isn't good? Hearing this, the coach gets really surprised and says, has the sun risen from the west? Since when do you have friends? Wei Hang tells him that these are his college friends. So the coach gets even more surprised and says, in school you used to stay away from everyone. Now you're making friends. How did this happen? Here, Wei Hang immediately remembers Anning. A smile appears on his face, and he says, it just happened like this. Here the coach gets really surprised and says, are my eyes deceiving me? Here the girl also looks in shock and says, is that ice block smiling? And here the chapter ends. Today's chapter begins where V Hang's coach asks him, are they just your friends? Where V Hang says if not friends, then what else would they be? On which the coach starts thinking that he is trying to hide his girlfriend. Or here, the coach asks, have your friends done rock climbing before? In which he says no. On which the coach says we cannot bring newbie people like Thisher. V Hang says, after all, what is the problem in newbie Peoply? On which the coach himself starts thinking that he has completely changed since his girlfriend Kama here. V Hang, seeing the coach smiling in a strange way, immediately asks, why are you laughing? In which the coach says nothing. I'm just happy for you. In which V Hang says, do not smile like this. You look very ugly. And then he immediately leaves from there, and he is going to practice. Then his coach stops him and says, do you not think you should wear protective gears? In which V Hang says, I do not need it. On which the coach starts getting angry, and we see V Hang starts climbing straight up without any safety. Here the coach shouts at him, be careful. I do not want to take you to hospital. Here V Hang starts saying there will be no need for Thaden, which the coach starts leaving from there. Then suddenly V Hang remembers a scene from the past where he sees his master falling from the mountain, and the story shifts to the past where we see that after falling from the mountain, V Hang's master had become very badly injured, but he was explaining to V Hang that it is not your fault in this. So do not regret. And the scene immediately comes to present where V Hang tells us that after that day I have practiced a lot till Todai and never going to fall now. The next scene starts directly with morning where we see Aoning and his friends who had reached V Hang's club starts thinking that we have come quite early. Then suddenly, the coach comes out from inside, on which all those people start looking towards him. Here the coach is also looking towards them, and then asks, what are you kids doing here so early in the morning? Then one friend of Aoning there tells that V Hang has invited a shearing, which the coach does not look happy at all. He starts looking around them, and he does not see any girl. So he thinks, I thought girlfriend was coming after all. Where is his girlfriend? In Themno? In the next scene we see that after scolding V Hang for times, the coach starts moving towards the mountain with his friend Sand, then starts thinking that my niece was right. V Chong will always remain single after which the next scene is shown to Yuzul those People had reached the hiking location here. They had done some climbing, in which we see that Bao had become quite tired and Aoning was supporting him, and now Aoning feels that he will not have to climb Anamorothan. The coach shows him towards the mountain and says you have to climb it. After seeing which the condition of these three becomes bad. Anyway, then again Aning's eyes go towards Vihang, where we see Vihang, who is looking quite stylish and was wearing his hiking gear here. The coach again goes to talk to Vihang, where Vihang tells that only a little time has passed since he Kamino. We see Aoning, whose eyes go to the hook fixed on top of the mountain here. Vihang tells him that he and his master had fixed that hook, in which Aoning gets surprised, and Vihang tells him, by the way, this mountain was not used for climbing, but I and my teacher had found this place since then. This is our secret bazaar. Vihang is telling him many more things, but Aoning's eyes go to Vihang's clothes, and Aoning starts thinking that why is Vihang wearing climbing gear over his clothes here. Aoning asks what is the name of this place. On this Vihang tells I had named this place. Its name is Thik Thakaning does not understand anything. He asks, what did you say in this? He says, I have named this place Thik Thakan, which Aoning starts laughing. And Vihang tells that my teacher had also named used to call it Young Fingerson, which Aoning says, your teacher must have been a very good person, on which Vihang becomes sad and says my teacher used to be a very good person. Aoning realizes from his talks that Vihang has been climbing for 3 years. That is why he asks in surprise, and he says, is it true in this? Vihang tells, yes, when I was 15 years old. Since then, I'm here for Klimbir again. Aoning starts thinking, who knows what I was doing 3 years ago. Our worlds are completely different. Then we see Vihang, who asks Aoning, do you have any other question? Here again we see Aoning, who starts asking some questions related to hiking, but Vihang is noticing that whenever Aoning talks to him, he touches his glasses, and he starts thinking either he feels awkward talking to me or his glasses are quite heavy. Then we see a boy comes and starts calling Vihang, and Vihang tells Aoning that he is his partner and both of them are going to climb together, after which Vihang starts removing his clothes, and we see that he was looking quite good in it. And Aoning directly holds his clothes and starts pulling, on which Vihang gets quite surprised, and he thinks I was going to keep this cloth, but Aoning was lost, and he holds the clothes. Vihang says thank you to him, and Aoning says give your besno. Aoning is staring at Vihang, and he thinks that how good he is and how tall he is. Whatever he has worn looks quite good on him. If I had worn those gears, then I would not even be able to walk. Then we see his coach comes there, who makes him wear the helmet, and the coach then starts telling everyone that no matter how you do climbing, wearing helmet is necessary. And then it starts reminding us that in the past his teacher used to be exactly like Fish, also always used to tell him to wear helmet during climbing, but I used to be quite stubborn and I did not like wearing helmet. And we see the story comes to present, and Vihang had now gone to climb the mountain, where Aoning also starts thinking about him. On here we see Vihang, who without wasting time starts climbing straight where Aoning was just looking at him in surprise. And we see Vihang, who is climbing that mountain without fear, without any trouble here. All this feels quite a lot to Aoning here. Aoning is getting quite surprised from this, and he looks quite impressed. Seeing Vihang is seeing a panther inside Vihangan. The other side, Vihang's fans are taking his pictures, and Vihang's partner was managing the rope, after which we again see that now Vihang had started facing some trouble, and the coach is telling all of them that he will handle it, and they tell that Vihang has now become expert in this. Then we suddenly see that Vihang starts slipping from there, and Aoning had become quite scared. All those people get quite scared, but Vihang immediately held a rock and hung there, and Aoning was just holding his breath looking at him. Only heartbeat had increased a lot. Vihang handles himself now and starts climbing once again. Here, the teacher tells that he has reached his position, but Vihang is quite expert in this, will complete the climbing very quickly, and will reach the top once again. Then everyone's eyes fall that Vihang had already reached quite close. Here, we see Vihang, who is thinking that now, and reach up very easily. Then suddenly, he starts remembering his teacher, and he immediately leaves this thought because maybe Vihang had some trauma related to his teacher. That is why he did not want to climb it. Then Aoning encourages him and says, Vihang, you should climb up. Go quickly. And here Aoning is cheering for Vihang quite happily, from which suddenly all the energy comes back in Vihang, and he starts smiling. Here, all the people are saying why Vihang is not climbing. Yupining also feels that maybe Vihang has got tired, but we see that hearing Aoning's voice, Vihang had started climbing again, from which Aoning becomes quite happy, and we see finally Vihang has reached the mountain top, and there, he is standing in a heroic pose, and Aoning, standing below, is cheering him the most by shouting loudly, and Vihang is also looking towards Aoning from above. And with this, today's chapter ends. Today's chapter starts, and we see that Vihang was looking very handsome on top of the mountain, and Aoning was cheering for him a lot from below, after which Vihang looks at him and immediately starts coming down, where Aoning was running towards him because he wanted to reach him first. And we see that Vihang's fans had already reached him, so Aoning thinks I will go later. Here, we see that Vihang's partner also comes and starts praising him. Vihang also praises him. Then both of them talk, and Vihang's assistant leaves from there. After which we see that Aoning comes to Vihang and gives him water to drink. Vihang drinks the water, then he also asks Aoning, do you want to drink? Aoning refuses. So Vihang says, I'm going to wash my hands with this water, so you will not be able to drink it. On which Aoning says okay, you can wash, and then he himself takes the bottle and starts washing Vihang's hands. And he was staring at him. Both of them wanted to talk. Then we see here he was about to say that when you were climbing the mountain, you were looking quite cool. But before he could complete his sentence, we see that Bao comes there, and he himself says you were looking very cool. And he comes between both of their talks, and poor Aoning is not able to continue his sentence. Here we again see Bao, who is complimenting Vihang a lot. Then Sengen comes there and says, why are you so obsessed with handsome boys? And we see Sengen and Bao start arguing again as usual, and Aoning and Vihang are watching them. Then Aoning's eyes fall that Vihang is injured, so he gets quite scared, and immediately holds his hand and says, did you get hurt? Why did you not tell me? And he immediately looks at his hand and says, I will have to apply medicine on it. Then he realizes that he has held Vihang's hands without his permission. Both of them start looking at each other, and Aoning thinks, since when have I become so bold that I silently held his hands? I cannot even talk to him properly, and I held his hands. Now Aoning immediately lets go of Vihang's hand with a jerk, and says I will bring bandage for you. Where we see Vihang had now started smiling, and tells him I'm not feeling any pain at all. In the meantime, all the friends start talking to each other. Then Aoning asks him how did it feel after reaching the top of the mountain. Then we see that suddenly Vihang starts moving close to Aoning. On this, Aoning gets scared and asks what happened. Then Vihang points towards his glasses and says, there is dust on them. This time Aoning immediately takes them off to clean, and Vihang tells him when I'm coming down, do not come near me, otherwise dust will fall on you. And he immediately takes out a piece of his hairband and gives it to Aoning, and tells him clean it with this. Aoning gets quite surprised because we see Vihang had given him a piece of his cloth. Now, in the next scene, we see Aoning, who is running out from there because the poor guy got stuck in traffic. And he also had to go to teach his student, and we see he reaches the mother of his student while running, where that lady says you do not need to worry if you get a little late, it is fine. But then his student starts saying, oh, Frogface, do you know my mom had to leave her appointment and come here so that she could drop me to you? On which his mom tells him, "You feeling like getting beaten? I have told you not to talk to elders like this." And that child was not going to listen at all, and Aoning had already got used to it. After which, in the next scene, we see Aoning who is teaching that child, but his attention is not at all on that child, where that child asks, "What were you doing since morning?" But Aoning was lost in thoughts of Vihang. So that child shouts, "I asked what were you doing since morning?" And Aoning gets scared. And that child says, "What are you thinking?" On which Aoning thinks, now what should I tell? And he says, "Even if I tell, you will not understand." And he asks him, "So tell me what you are not understanding in studies." On this, the child says, "I do not understand anything. The studies and all is useless. I do not want to become a good student." On which Aoning asks him why. After all, why do you not want to study? And why do you not want to become a good student? On which that boy says, "Because good students do not get girlfriends. They always remain busy in studies only." Here, the cute smile on Aoning's face suddenly disappears, and he thinks this small packet is opening the doti, and he immediately tells him, "How do you know that I do not have a girlfriend? And do you not think you are quite small for all these things?" Then that child's eyes fall on Aoning's hands, where a piece of hairband is tied, and he says, "You have a girlfriend. After all, who gave this to you?" On which Aoning gets scared and steps back and says, "Stop your nonsense. I do not have any girlfriend." On which that child says, "I already knew that. That is why I do not want to study." And then he immediately says, "If I do not study like this and remain a bad student, then I will get a lot of girlfriends." And Aoning again starts thinking, this is a big blast in the name of small packet. Now, the next scene shows us Aoning's home, where poor Aoning is trying to sleep, but that child's words are roaming in his entire mind, that he does not have any girlfriend, and the poor guy is not able to sleep. And the next day, he thinks, because of that child, I did not get any sleep at all. And then we see he came with his friends to eat. Then those people notice that Vihang had not come there today either. But Vihang had asked Aoning about attendance. So Aoning had said, "Do not worry, I will make it." And he asks him, "Why did you not come today after all?" On which Vihang tells that I was sleeping and I could not wake up, because of which Aoning starts laughing. Seeing Aoning smiling, his friend asks him, "Aoning, everything fine above? Why are you showing teeth without any reason?" On which Aoning says, laughing, "There is nothing." Then we see Bao gets quite worried and he shouts, "Aoning, one more new gossip has spread in our school." On which Aoning asks him now what happened. On which Bao tells that now gossip is spreading in school that a lady from a very rich family is supporting a boy. She is sponsoring him, and those people start talking that some child of the school is taking advantage of a rich lady. And as soon as Aoning sees that lady, he gets quite surprised, because this lady is his student's mom. Here Aoning starts getting very angry, knowing this, that people are saying cheap things about her without knowing her. So he starts defending her and he gets quite worried that now how will he handle this situation, and thinks it is good that Miss Kyan cannot see this. If she sees this message, she would feel very bad. Now, in the next scene, we see Aoning is leaving from there. Then a guy bumps into him, and Aoning's phone falls. As soon as Aoning turns and looks towards him, he gets quite scared. And we see that boy who was none other than that pervert who used to peep into girls' washroom and install cameras and all. Aoning also immediately recognizes him. Here we see Aoning, who is thinking, did he bump into me on purpose? And he starts looking at his phone, which had broken. Then we see Lady Kanfai comes there, who asks Aoning what happened. On which Aoning tells nothing, just my phone has broken. Then Lady Kanfai offers Aoning a ride, and Aoning sits in the car. After which we see that Lady Kanfai tells Aoning, I will buy you a phone. Which phone do you use? But Aoning starts refusing for this, and says, I will get the phone repaired. But we see Kanfai, who looks at Aoning's phone and understands that he has been using this phone for almost 5 years. And she immediately starts taking Aoning from there. Now, in the next scene, we see Aoning, who gets down from the car, and is going to get his phone repaired. And here, Kanfai asks him, do you need my help? but Aoning refuses. And Kanfai starts leaving from there. Then we see Aoning, who is hesitating a lot, and Kanfai also understands by looking at him that he wants to say something. And she asks him what happened after all, but Aoning tells her that on the school forum some people are saying bad things about you. Here, Aoning tells her that people in the campus are misunderstanding you after seeing. Where Kanfai understands his words quite easily, and says I understood, I will take care of this matter. And she immediately leaves from there. And before leaving, she is calling someone. Here, before leaving, she was talking on call with a person that she wants to find. Someone. And Aoning had also heard her talk. And he thinks, after all, who is Miss Kan looking for? Now in the next scene, Aoning comes to his class, and he was quite surprised to see that Vihang had also come to class today. He immediately goes to Vihang, and while returning his cloth says, you can keep it. Here we see Vihang, who takes his cloth, but he immediately starts smelling it, and says, did you wash it? But Aoning gets quite surprised that why is Vihang smelling it after all. Here Vihang, while smelling the cloth, says it is smelling quite good. I mean, the surf you used to wash. It must be quite good. Now in the next scene, we see Aoning is thinking about this scene the whole day. That why did Vihang smell that cloth after all? Then we see Bao, who is looking at Aoning's new phone and asks him, did you buy a new phone? On this, Aoning tells no, my phone had broken. So the mom of the child I teach gifted me this phone. And here, we see Lady Kanfai giving this phone to Aoning. But Aoning was refusing for it. But Lady Kanfai says, do not worry, I'm not giving you any new phone. This is my old phone. Only you can keep it. But that small child comes and says, keep it quietly, frog face. Otherwise my mom will buy you a new phone. So Aoning cannot do anything now. He has to keep it. Where Bao gets quite surprised after seeing that phone, because that phone was really very expensive. But then Sengen takes the phone from his hands and tells Aoning you should not show this phone to everyone, otherwise people will misunderstand you. On this, Aoning gets confused. Now, Sengen tells Aoning, you already know what kind of things people are saying on the school forum. That is why you should not show this phone to many people. And Aoning tells him, I know that people are making up things. But for me, this is just a gift which my student's mom gave me, which Sengen says only we know this thing. School children will not understand you and will blame you wrongly. On which Aoning tells him, okay, I understood. Now, in the next scene, we see that their physical education class is going on. And here, the teacher tells them to do exercises. But Aoning had already got tired just by hearing the name. Now in the next scene, we see Vihang's turn comes, and he asks the teacher, how many pull-ups do I have to do? On this, the teacher tells him to do 30. Here, all the people start cheering for him, and Aoning thinks these many pull-ups are nothing for Vihang and he will do it in a snap. On this, we see Vihang really goes and does the pull-ups quite easily, and he is not putting any effort in it at all. And he does pull-ups till 29 and then leaves it. Where all the people start talking about him, that why did he not complete the pull-ups? The teacher also asks him the same, so Vihang says, I have already got 90 points for it, so I do not need 100 out of 100. And here the hearts of these poor people break. And here Aoning starts thinking, as I had expected from him, he did the same. Now, the next turn comes to Aoning. And Vihang starts looking towards him. As Aoning is moving forward, Vihang asks him, do you want me to hold your glasses? On this, Aoning says there is no need for this anyway, I will not be able to do pull-ups. And Vihang wishes him good luck. Now, in the next scene, we see Aoning, who was lying unconscious on the ground, because he had become unconscious as soon as he started. Here his friends are supporting him, and here Aoning says, I have got badly tired. On which Shengyan says you had just started, are you so weak? And Shengyan says you should have refused from the starting itself, and should not have gone. But Aoning says, I just wanted to see how much I can do. And in reality, what was going on in his mind was that Vihang is watching me, and he is encouraging me. So I have to do all this for him. And seeing Vihang only, he starts doing all this. Then we see in the next scene, There is a girl who finds a very expensive phone lying on the ground, and she starts asking everyone, after all, whose phone is this? Then Bao tells Aoning that is your phone, right? Here, Aoning also gets scared that after all, what is his phone doing there? And those girls start checking his phone, and she thinks, after all, who can leave such an expensive phone here? Here, Aoning wanted to take his phone. If he asks for that phone in front of everyone, then people would suspect him and gossip. That is why he does not go there, and we see Vihang because he is quietly watching Aoning. And right here, today's chapter ends. Today's chapter starts, and we see that because of the fear of rumors, Aoning is not going to take his phone back. Vihang also notices this, and he immediately goes to that girl, and takes the phone from her, and says this is my phone. Where Songsha does not understand anything, and Vihang comes to him quietly, and gives him that phone, and says I think this is yours. After taking his phone, Aoning says thank you to him, and Vihang leaves from there. And Aoning is thinking that I should have been more careful. Now in the next scene, we see Vihang, who had come to the rehab with his teacher, where the lady tells him, you always stay with the teacher. This way you will not get any girlfriend. Here, the teacher starts shouting at him and says, you said absolutely right. Anyway, he can attract as many girls as he wants, but he never goes near anyone. On which that lady tells him, you are acting very good. You have also not asked me for a date till today. On which the teacher cannot say anything. And we see, as soon as Vihang sits in the car, his teacher says get out of here quickly. Here, we again see the teacher who tells Vihang that I am very lucky that I met that girl. Vihang, if you ever find someone you love, then never let her go. Here, the teacher keeps talking about his own things. Then he sees that Vihang is looking somewhere else and tells him, what are you doing? Then we look outside, where Aoning had come to meet that pretty lady, where that lady was giving him a gift. Seeing which Vihang gets very angry, and the teacher also notices all this and immediately says, are you looking at that beautiful girl? But this is quite bad, because she is already married. But how bad that 2 years ago her husband passed away. Now, she has only her one child, but still you should not raise your eyes towards her. Where Vihang says I was just looking at her. This does not mean that I will immediately go to impress her. On which his teacher says, you do not look at anyone, right? That is why I got quite surprised. Here Vihang tells him, you know quite a lot about that girl. Who was that boy who was with her? Where his teacher does not know anything about this, and he says maybe some relative of hers. And then the teacher says, but both of them do not look alike, so they cannot be relatives. Which makes Vihang even more angry, and he immediately applies the brake, because of which the teacher gets scared and says, what are you doing all this? But we see Vihang still quite annoyed. Now, we see Aoning, who had come back to his room. It had rained on the way, and he had got wet. He thinks that I borrowed Lady Kanfai's clothes to save from rain. I have to return this then. As soon as he reaches his room, he meets his friends there. He goes to talk to them, then Bao tells him something quite bad has happened. And Shengyan shows him a post which was made on the school forum, where as soon as Aoning sees it, he gets quite surprised, because in that post it was written that one student of our school who is studying on scholarship has an iPhone. Should such a rich child be given scholarship? And here, people are talking about Aoning only in giving a lot of abuses, where we see Aoning who cannot say anything. He has got quite scared, and says, after all, how did this happen? Now, the next scene, we see Lady Kanfai, who was giving a lift to one friend of Vihang, but someone was following them. Here Kanfai says, is he your boyfriend who is coming behind us? On which Vihang's friend says, come, let us trouble him. And she immediately starts teasing him. Now after some time, we see Vihang gets down and is taking out his helmet. And his friend comes and asks him, why were you following us? On which Vihang says, who said I was following you? On which that girl says, then were you following Lady Kaian Kai? Where? Vihang asks her, how do you know her? On which that girl tells him, have you fallen in love at first sight with her? But she is already married. On which Vihang says, I know. And then that girl tells, by the way, Lady Canfeng is nowadays seen with some college boy, and as soon as she remembers the university name, she recalls that Vihang also studies there and asks Vihang, "Do you know about this?" On which Vihang tells yes, "I know that boy." Now, in the next scene, we see Vihang doing training, where he was not able to focus at all. His boss also asks about him, so Vihang says, "I am just distracted." Here his coach also teases him and says, "Are you thinking about that pretty lady?" On which Vihang says, "After all, why are all of you talking about her? Only, I'm not interested in her at all." On this his coach says, "Okay, do not lie to me." Here Vihang tells him, "I am not like everyone. In this world, people show one thing and are something else. Animals are better than humans. At least they do not lie to me." On this, the teacher says, "If you look into humans' eyes, you will know truth and lie." And we see Vihang, who starts remembering Aoning, and he is not able to understand anything. Here then, we see Aoning is messaging Vihang and calling him for class, and the coach also sees and understands that it was that glasses boy and starts asking about him and says he is quite good. Right on which Vihang gets up and leaves and says, "You have nothing to do with this." Here in the next scene, we see Aoning, who is thinking Vihang neither came to class nor is replying to my message. After all, what is going on here? Then his eyes fall and we see Vihang is coming from the front. Here Aoning goes to talk to him, but Vihang, seeing the gift kept near him, says, "This looks quite expensive." On which Aoning tells, "This is not mine, I have to return it." Then we see, suddenly Vihang tells him, "So are you going to return this expensive cloth along with your iPhone? If you have so much money that you can buy clothes and iPhone, then why do you study with scholarship? Do you not think that someone needy should get your scholarship instead of you?" Because of which Aoning just keeps looking at him in surprise. But Aoning does not say a single word to him, and quietly leaves from there. Here only Vihang is running in his mind, and he thinks this is the first time Vihang has looked at me with so much hate. And Aoning looks quite disappointed, and he thinks, after all, how can he say such bad things to me when he does not know anything about me? Here Aoning is looking at that phone and thinking that all the trouble started after taking this phone. I will return it. Here, then, in the next scene, we see Aoning returns Canfai's phone and buys a cheap phone for himself, but he was quite happy with it too. But as soon as he turns on his new phone, there were many messages from Canfai, because she was asking him, "After all, why did you return the phone? If there is any problem, then you can tell me." Here Aoning starts thinking that I have troubled Lady Canfai also. Here then, we see Canfai calls him, and Aoning tells her that I have bought a new phone. "So I was returning your phone." On this, Canfai asks, "Was there any problem with my phone?" On this, Aoning says, "No, it is just that I study in college on scholarship. So if people see a new phone with me that too so expensive, then they will make up things." On which Canfai asks him, "Has someone said something to you?" On which Aoning says, "No, nothing like that. I just did not feel right taking that gift." On which Canfai gets very angry and says in anger, "Are you stupid? I gave you one of my old second-hand phones. You returned that and bought a new phone for yourself. Do you not think you are wasting money like this? You should save your money for your studies and food. You are just a student now. You cannot spend so uselessly." This Aoning says, "I understand." And in his mind only Vihang's words were running, where he had seen him with a lot of anger, and he cannot say anything. But we see Canfai, who immediately becomes calm, and says, "You should not pay attention to what others say. They do not know anything about you. The one who is just saying bad about you is cheap. He only knows how to bully others. You have not done anything bad." After this Aoning says, "I understood your words," and he says thank you to her and ends the call. Then Bao comes there and says, "You bought a new phone again." On this Aoning gives excuse, "My old phone got lost." On which Bao says that was quite a good phone. Then Shengyan hits Bao and asks Aoning, "You bought a new phone, do you have money to eat?" Because all these new Aoning's financial condition, that sometimes the poor guy cannot even afford food. But Aoning assures him that everything is fine, he has money. Here, Then Shengyan tells him, "You always do this. You never tell us about your problems. We are your friends. We also want to help you. So whenever you have shortage of food or you have any problem, you can come and tell us." And Bao also tells him the same and says, "I am always ready to feed you food." Now, in the next scene, we see someone comes there and throws the bag, because of which Aoning got quite scared. And we see Vihang comes there. But after seeing Vihang, Aning's mood gets bad and he becomes quite sad. Where Bao starts talking to Vihang, but Sengen pulls him away. Meanwhile, Aoning, sitting behind, is thinking it will be good if he does not see me. Otherwise, it will become quite awkward. Now, in the next scene, we see the teacher who was teaching. Then he sees Vihang and says, "You handsome boy who sometimes attends class, give me the answer of that question." On which Vihang says, "I do not know." The teacher gets angry. Here, the teacher asks Vihang a question. A case of bullying and sexual assault has come in school, where both victims are boys. So tell, what is your opinion on this? After all, how should we handle this case? On which Vihang says the answer is simple. We should immediately finish that boy who did the assault. Here all the people start supporting him. And Bao tells Aoning he should have been a superhero, not a lawyer. And Aoning starts laughing on this. So Vihang starts staring at him. And Aoning gets quite scared and says, "I was not laughing at you." Then we see Bao, who asks Vihang for lunch. But Aoning was feeling quite awkward, and he thinks that if I am here, Vihang will not go with us. Then Vihang first looks at him and then says, "Okay, I will come with you." Because of which Aoning gets quite surprised. And Aoning is looking towards Vihang in quite confusion. And right here, today's chapter ends. Chapter starts, and we see Aoning has gone out for dinner with all his friends. But he was worried about how many things Vihang had said to him. Now, the situation between them is going to become quite awkward. Then we see Bao notices that the green light has come. And we see that he and Sengen immediately cross the light. And as Aoning is about to cross the road, the light turns red and cars start moving there. But before anything bad could happen, we see Vihang pulls Aoning back. Aoning immediately moves away from Vihang and apologizes to. Now, we see a restaurant scene, where Bao calls both of them, and Aoning and Vihang had also reached there. Here, after seeing Aoning's phone, Vihang says, "Did you buy a new phone again?" Here, Aoning does not understand what answer he should give to this. He wanted to clear this misunderstanding. And Vihang also asks Aoning, "What do you want to order?" And Shengyan also notices this awkwardness between both of them. Then Bao starts ordering food there. In the meantime, we see Vihang takes out a bottle of beer there, because of which all those people become quite happy. Here those people ask Aoning, "Can you drink?" For which Aoning says, "Yes." But we see that only after 20 minutes, he becomes completely drunk with just one glass. Here all those people start saying that even if Aoning is a top student, he is not top in drinking. On the other side, Shengyan and Bao are making plans to go to the internet cafe. But Vihang wants to take Aoning with him so that he can drop Aoning home. And Aoning had become quite drunk. So Vihang tells them, "I'll drop Aoning home now." In the next scene, we see Aoning, who is returning home with Vihang. Then as soon as Aoning opens his eyes, he gets quite scared seeing Vihang, and he immediately steps back and says, "What are you doing here?" And he asks about his friends. Where did they go after all? On which Vihang tells that those people went to the internet cafe. So Aoning asks, "Then why did you not go there?" On which Vihang says, "I am your roommate, and bringing you back is my responsibility." And here, Vihang starts feeling that Aoning does not want to see him. But we see Aoning, who is still drunk, and he says, "I can handle myself. I will leave from here. So you go to your home." Where Vihang also starts leaving from there, and Aoning is still quite drunk, and he is walking unsteadily and thinks, "I will not drink again. I cannot get so badly drunk like this." And here, he starts thinking that I was so drunk that I could not even talk to Vihang and could not clear the misunderstanding either. And after today, he probably will not talk to me again. Then we see Aoning starts falling. But Vihang comes and holds him. On this, Aoning asks in surprise, "What are you doing here? You did not leave." Here Aoning is quite drunk, and he says, "I thought you had left." But Vihang was trying to make him stand straight. But because Aoning is quite drunk, he is swaying here and there, and he falls on Vihang, because of which Vihang gets quite surprised. Here Aoning again starts getting worried, and he thinks my body is not at all in my control. I think Vihang will misunderstand me for this too, that I am sticking to him on purpose. Then we see Vihang, who as soon as he holds Aoning gets scared and moves away. Here Vihang asks him, "Has your drunkenness gone?" On which Aoning says yes, on which Vihang says, "Then come, I will drop you back," for which Aoning starts refusing. Then we see Aoning is telling him, "I am fine, I am not drunk." But he again starts falling once more, and Vihang holds him again, and Vihang asks him, "Are you drunk or not? Tell me directly." On which Aoning says, "I am a little drunk." On which Vihang tells him, "You cannot even walk in a straight line, and you are saying you are not drunk." After which he holds Aoning's hand and starts taking him, where Aoning had got a little surprised by this. Now, we see both of them going together, where, suddenly, Vihang asks Aoning, "What were you doing in that rich area that day?" On this Aoning tells him, "I had gone there for a part-time job." On which Vihang says, "You said you work in some restaurant, and when I researched this, I found out that there is no restaurant there. So after all, how much will you lie to me?" On this, Aoning starts getting worried and he thinks, "After all, why is he researching about me?" Then he immediately tells him, "I only work in the restaurant on Saturday and Sunday. Apart from that, I give tuition to children." On which Vihang asks him, "After all, how many jobs do you do?" On which Aoning tells, "I do quite a lot of work." Then Vihang asks Aoning, "You returned that phone which your employer gave you?" On which Aoning gets surprised and thinks, after all, how does Vihang know about this? Here Aoning starts thinking, is Vihang worried about me? And then we see Aoning, who is laughing, on which Vihang asks, "What happened to you?" On which Aoning says nothing at all. Here, then Aoning starts remembering Bao's words that he had told that Vihang's hands are quite rough. Here Aoning starts touching his hands and feeling them, says really its hands are quite tough. On which Vihang pulls him towards himself and says, "I have got quite a lot of injuries on my hands. This does not mean that I cannot feel. You are touching my hands, right?" On this, Aoning starts sweating and he says, "No, I was not doing that." Then Vihang hits on Aoning's head and says, "Behave properly." Because of which Aoning had got quite scared, and he had become a very red tomato. Now, the next scene is shown to us directly as morning, where Aoning has woken up and is thinking that now will never drink so much again. Then a girl comes there and tells him to join the mountain climbing club, and she says that she can teach him all this. On this, Aoning starts refusing and says, "I do not have so much strength inside me that I can climb a mountain." On this, that girl starts saying, "Senior, you will not be more useless than me." Then suddenly Vihang comes in between there, who asks Aoning, "Do you want to learn rock climbing?" On this, Aoning says, "Yes, maybe I want to learn." On which Vihang directly asks, "Do you want to learn because of me?" But Aoning gets worried and thinks, how does this man say everything so directly? Then he says, "No, I want to try by myself." Then Vihang tells him, "I will teach you," because of which both of them get quite surprised. Here, that girl says, "You directly got a master, but Vihang's fee must be quite high." Here Aoning also tells Vihang, "I do not have time for this, and neither do I have money. I cannot learn from you because rock climbing classes are quite expensive." On the other side, Vihang is thinking in his mind, has he forgotten that matter? I think now I should forgive him. After all, why does he keep reminding me again and again that I treated him quite badly? Can he not just forget that matter directly? And here, we notice one thing, that Vihang had still not apologized to Aoning, but he wanted Aoning to forget about it. Here, Vihang tells Aoning, "And teach you for free. In return, you teach me math." For which Aoning immediately agrees. Then Aoning's eyes fall on Vihang's bag, and he asks him, are you going on a trip or coming back from there? On this Vihang tells no, I'm shifting here. Here Aoning gets quite surprised and asks him, are you coming back to the dorm? But why? On which Vihang says, do you want me not to come? On which Aoning says, there is nothing like that. And we see Vihang, whom the teacher had told to do this. Here, Vihang asks Aoning, I want to come back, so come now. Let us go to the room. Here we see Aoning, who gets a little worried. And he thinks, after all, why does Vihang suddenly want to come back to the room? And we see Vihang, who is walking straight ahead. Then suddenly, he calls Aoning's name, and as Aoning looks towards him, Vihang asks him, after all, what is our room number? On which Aoning starts laughing. Now, the next scene is shown to us that Aoning is in his room, and he is thinking that I had got used to living alone. But now Vihang has come here, so now, will not feel lonely. Now, we see the night scene where suddenly the lights go off. On which Vihang asks Aoning what happened here. Then Aoning tells him at 11 o'clock at night, the lights of every room go off, in which Vihang immediately lights a lamp, and Aoning starts thinking that Vihang must have never stayed alone in any dorm. That is why he does not know. Then we see Aoning is brushing his teeth. Then Vihang comes and asks, after all, where do you work? Tell me on this. Aoning says, I just work somewhere like that, and Aoning asks, why do you want to go on this? Vihang says, just like that. Then he asks him, do you really want to learn rock climbing? Are you free after 2 days? So then Aoning tells that he is not free. Then Vihang says, okay, we can go some days later. Also, then we see Vihang, who suddenly starts going close to Aoning and smells his hair. Then he gets quite scared and immediately steps back, and we see he is very scared. Aoning asks him, what happened to you? In this, Vihang looks quite suspicious to us, and he is thinking, after all, why did I smell him? Here Vihang is also feeling quite strange about himself. After this, in the next scene, we see that Aoning has come after bathing, where we see Vihang is watching movie and all on his computer. Aoning starts asking him, what are you doing? In which Vihang also invites him. Here, we see both of them are watching movie together. Then suddenly, Vihang looks towards Aoning, where Aoning had become quite emotional. Here, Vihang asks Aoning, after all, what happened to you? So Aoning tells that this scene was quite emotional. So Vihang tells that when I saw this movie for the first time, I also started crying. Here then, Aoning starts imagining how Vihang would look when he cries. And he starts laughing, imagining little Vihang. And then he remembers the time that he has become quite late. That is why, he tells Vihang, now I'm going to sleep. On which Vihang tells him, okay, then I will turn off the movie. But Aoning says there is no need for this. You watch, I will go to sleep myself. Vihang says no, I do not want to create inconvenience for you. Then he turns off the movie and lies on the bed. After this, we see both of them where they are sleeping. Here Aoning is not getting any sleep at all. He is tossing here and there, and he thinks Vihang must not have habit of sleeping like this either. That is why he asks Vihang, do you feel strange here? Have you slept on this kind of bed before? This Vihang says no, but I will get used to it. Now, we see the next morning scene where Aoning had already woken up, and as soon as he wakes up, he starts studying. First, he looks towards Vihang, whether he has woken up or not. Then he keeps looking towards Vihang again, and is explaining to himself that he should not get distracted, and he starts focusing on his studies. Then we see Vihang's sleep also breaks, and he says good morning to him. On this Aoning says, did I wake you up? In which Vihang says nothing like that. But Aoning is looking towards him quite confused. Here in Aoning's mind, it is running. This is the first time I have seen him waking up in the morning. We see Vihang, who directly jumps from his bed and comes down. Now, he starts looking outside and thinks it is still quite morning. And he asks Aoning, is our class early today? On which Aoning tells nothing like that. I had just woken up early in the morning to study. On which Vihang says your schedule is quite dangerous. Then Vihang asks him, do you have holiday today? Which Aoning tells no today. Also, he has to go for job. Then Vihang says I'm free only for today, so I want to take you for rock climbing. On which Aoning also gets excited and says, okay, if you are free, then let us go. Because of which Vihang also becomes quite happy. Then Aoning tells him, but I do not have any equipment, which Vihang says, okay, then you take mine. And then we see Vihang taking off his clothes there to change, which, seeing Aoning, had started feeling quite shy, and right here, today's chapter ends.